I'm Charlene. I'm a grateful alcoholic. And I'm here to introduce our speaker, Jeff Knepper. And for those of you who don't know, we're married. And Jeff's pretty awesome. And just in case you weren't aware, or those of you who are like sitting around the rooms looking for a spouse, we got together about a week after sitting there before a Friday night meeting bitching about the sad state of relationships and recovery and when were we ever going to find somebody to have a healthy relationship with. And then, the rest is history. No, but Jeff is the yin to my yang. He keeps me grounded and balanced. And he has a heart of gold. And there's so many parts of his story, so I'm not sure which ones are going to come out tonight, but maybe he'll just put it all out there. Who knows? So get your Kleenexes ready, and I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Good evening, family. My name is Jeff Knepper, and I'm an alcoholic.
Yeah.
I've had the gift of sobriety since December 28th, 1999. I'm as grateful for that today as I know how to be. Even though I don't always act like it. You can ask my wife. I fall into self a lot. So what it was like, what happened, and what it's like today. What it was like, I was born in the Midwest in Chicago to a middle-class family. My dad was in metal manufacturing, so we traveled around a lot when I was growing up. I didn't really have a home. We moved about every 3 or 4 years. I had an older brother who was about 9 years my senior, and he was a troublemaker. He got into some things that he shouldn't have and hung around people he shouldn't have. And when we were growing up, he was always pretty mean to me. I don't know if he was jealous because I was the new kid on the block or what, but the jealousy turned into to violence, and then the violence turned into molestation, and molestation turned into lying, and then my parents had another child. So he told me that if I ever told my parents about the molestation, that he would kill my baby sister. Now you tell a 6-year-old that your baby sister's going to die if you tell something to an adult. That child's going to be full of fear and not say anything. So I never told anybody. We grew up, we moved around a lot. He joined the Marine Corps and shipped out, and finally at last I was free, so to speak, to do what I wanted and try to grow up and build for those years that I missed. I tried sports. I'm not real athletic, if you couldn't tell. So I got into music. I excelled in music. I played alto saxophone, I played piano, I played guitar. I got a scholarship to Ball State University for my saxophone. And needless to say, I didn't go because I was busy doing other things. Those other things included girls. And the love of my life at that time, we moved to Texas my senior year in high school, and I stayed up there and graduated, and I missed her so much, because she was the love of my life. I packed her up and I moved her down in her little Dodge Omni, and we got a little apartment together, and it was wonderful for about a week and a half. Well, by then I was already drinking pretty heavily and doing some side dishes. And I could never bring home a paycheck. I could never come home in a decent hour. I was never responsible for anything. My parents had to step in and cover the notes for our rent, for our utilities, everything known to man. And I thought it was okay because that's what they should do. Because I was just having fun. Well, I was going to school, believe it or not. I had a dream to become a hairdresser. And I was going to school to get my cosmetology license. And we had the opportunity to go to Dallas to a hair show. We packed up in a little van. There was like 6 of us. We drove to Dallas over the weekend. I came home Sunday night, drunker than Cooter Brown. And I stumbled into the bathroom, and there was this little stick on the counter with a big plus sign on it. And I was like, what is this? So I peeked my head out the door and I said, I won't say her name, "Hey you, you got something to tell me?" And she was like, "Yeah, dummy, I'm pregnant." And I was like, "Well, whose is it?" Because, I wasn't there for anything, I thought. Obviously, I was there for a few moments. But I went to my dad and I said, "Dad, here's the situation. She's pregnant. I don't know what to do." He said, "I'll tell you what you need to do." He said, "You need to man up." He said, "You need to quit school. You need to get a job. You need to get benefits. You need to be responsible for your family." He said, "Like every other man in our family's ever done." I said, "Oh, okay, I can do that." So I quit school, put my dreams to the side, and I got a job that had insurance. And I still couldn't bring home a paycheck, but we had insurance. And my first son was born December 18th of 1987. So, yeah, I've got grandkids today. Needless to say, the relationship between my wife and I at that time did not get any better. I continued to drink and do the things I did alcoholically for the rest of the time being. And we fought constantly. I couldn't figure out why. And our friends would always say, "We need to have another baby. Another baby will fix everything." I was like, "Another baby? I don't like the one I have now." So, lo and behold, we have another baby. And Chase was born December 27th of 1992. My divorce was final in November of 93. Smartest thing that woman ever did was she put me out to the curb and she said, "I can't do this anymore." Now, when she divorced me, I thought, this is carte blanche. I can do what I want, when I want, how I want, and I don't have any responsibilities. Well, that was true to a certain point until I needed a place to sleep or needed a ride somewhere or, wanted cigarettes or, needed to wash my clothes, simple things like that, or hungry. So I would couch surf a lot. And a friend of mine got a job in Seattle. And he says to me, "Well, look, I'm moving to Seattle. I got a job with Microsoft. Come up there with me. You can have a clean start. Everything will be brand new, clean air, beautiful countryside." He said, "You can start all over." And I was like, "Well, Mike, that's a good idea." So I packed my duffel bag, because that was all I owned. And I got in this truck and we went. We went to Seattle. And it was beautiful. And it was cold. And it snowed a lot. I didn't have a car. I didn't have a job. So I would sit in his apartment feeling sorry for myself. But the liquor store conveniently was like a block and a half away from the apartment. So I would trudge through the snow to get to the liquor store to get what I wanted. And he would come home and he'd be like, "Did you get a job?" I'd be like, "No, not yet." He goes, "Well, I see you're drinking a lot." I was like, "Well, yeah, there's nothing better to do." He said, "Well, you could look for a job." I was like, "Well, no, that's not really going to happen." So we fought for a while, and some friends of mine back home where I grew up were like, "Dude, you're wasting away. You turned into nothing. You had so much hope. You had so much charisma. You had so much potential. Come back home and start over again." And I thought, that's what I need, a clean start. Just another clean start. So I scrambled up enough money to get a plane ticket. I flew back home, and I get off the plane, and my friends are there to pick me up. And we go to his house. And he's like, "Okay, first thing you're doing Monday is you're going to look for a job." And I was like, no, you don't understand. I gotta ease my way into this. This is culture shock, coming from Seattle to this podunk town in Indiana. And he said, "Well, culture shock or not, you're going to find a job." So, long story short, I found a job I hated. I drank that job away. I ended up getting kicked out of his house and staying at a homeless shelter. Well, while I was in the homeless shelter, this thought popped in my head that I have an uncle in Arizona. And this uncle one time told me when I was little, because I think he knew what was going on with my brother. He told me when I was little, he said, anytime you want to move in with me, just come on out. You can stay with me. So while I was in the homeless shelter, I thought, well, this is another predicament I got myself into. What can I do to get out? So I panhandled enough money to get a bus ticket to Arizona. I walked from downtown Phoenix to his house on 93rd Street. I knock on his door. His wife answers the door. And she's with a look of aghast. Oh, hi, Jeff. What are you doing here? And I've got my duffel bag in my hands. And I said, I'm here to move in. Uncle Dean said I could live here. She was like, that was 25 years ago. I was like, so it still doesn't count? I need a place to stay. And she was like, don't go anywhere. She slams the door in my face. And I can hear the voices escalating behind the door. Finally, after what seemed like forever, my uncle opens the door and he said, come on in. He goes, I don't know what the heck you're doing here. He didn't say heck. He said, I don't know what the heck you're doing here. He said, your family. And he said, you can stay here for 2 weeks. He said, in the meantime, you need to find a job and a place to live and get on your feet. We see, I had no intentions of finding a job. I didn't want a job. I just wanted to do the stuff I wanted to do, because I was having fun. So I drank tremendously while I was at his house. And I would smoke in the backyard. And in Arizona, they don't have grass. Kind of like we don't have grass now. They don't have grass. They have rocks as their yards. And I would flick my cigarettes out in his yard. Now, he's a detective in the Phoenix Police Department. He doesn't miss anything at all. And he came home one day, he goes, I counted 32 cigarette butts in the backyard. He goes, you've got 1 hour to pick them all up. He goes, you got 48 hours to be out of my house. I was like, boy, you don't understand. I'm your nephew. You told me I could live here. So I packed up my little duffel bag and I got a job. And the job took me to the other side of Phoenix to a place called Scottsdale. And Scottsdale, if you're not familiar with it, is a lot like River Oaks. Very hoity-toity. Everybody drives a Saab or a Mercedes or a Rolls-Royce or a Bentley. There are no panhandlers. But there was a Jack-in-the-Box. And I'm going to get back to that Jack-in-the-Box in just a minute. So I find a job because of the guy I used to drink with at the bar. He got me a job at a company there in Scottsdale. And this job was amazing. I didn't really have to do anything but show up and make phone calls. I could do that, drunk or sober. So I take the job, I get a little apartment, things are going good. I buy a car. Now I've got wheels because I have a job, I have an income. Something I forgot to tell you was I didn't use my real Social Security number when I got the job because I didn't want my ex-wife to find me and take child support. See how that worked? So all the while I think I've got it going on, right? I am making tons of money selling stuff for a company that I had no idea what they were about. But I was good at talking, I was good at selling. So one Monday we come in and there are these bright pink 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper on everybody's computer. This was back when there were the big CRTs. Remember, they looked like TV sets? So everybody had these big pink slips on their TV sets, monitors. And we got bought out. And the company that bought us was laying us all off. So my dream job, where I was making more money than I should have and not doing anything with it that was right, was gone. Problem was, at the bottom of the little note that said you're out of a job, said stop by payroll and get your 3-month severance pay. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when I'm in my cups, if you give me a large amount of money, I'm not going to do anything right with it. So I take 3 months' salary, I go to the bank, I cash the check, because that's what we do. At least that's what I did. And I still had an apartment. I stopped paying rent. But I still had an apartment. I still had a car. But I stopped paying for the car. But I had all this cash. So I would take all my friends to the bar, all my friends to the strip club, and it was always on Jeff. Always on Jeff. Well, in about 2 weeks, I'm broke. I mean broke. I don't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of. And I'm thinking, what do I do now? So I drive up to my little apartment, and there's this big yellow notice on my door. And in Arizona, when they evict you, they put all your stuff in the parking lot. None of this nice stuff where they send you an attorney's letter and say, you've got 72 hours to move out. This is like, you haven't paid your rent, get your stuff and get out. And literally all of my furniture, all my clothes, everything I owned was sitting in the parking lot of my apartment complex. And I thought, well, this is a fine pickle you've gotten yourself into. So I just let it all sit there. I got in my car, and I drove over to a place that I used to frequent. And while I was in the bar, they repossessed my car. You want to talk about luck? You know? So now I have no car, no apartment, no furniture, no job, no life. I'm going to do what all the cool kids do, and I'm going to live life on the land. I'm going to be homeless because I see so many people do it, and they're successful at it. So I was homeless. Couldn't pick a better place to do it, Scottsdale, Arizona. I mean, you know, if you're going to panhandle for people that carry hundreds. And so I was able to support my drinking habit pretty successfully. And I took up a location behind Jack in the Box, because that Jack in the Box had an enclosed dumpster. And in that enclosed dumpster, there were concrete walls, and there was a big door. And when I was out there, I could sleep there. They wouldn't bother me. I'd hear the trash truck coming in the morning, so I knew when to get up and move around. And I knew which bags in the trash can I could eat out of, and which bags the rats were in. So I did that for a while, and finally I got to the point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. I knew I had kids in Texas that I hadn't been responsible for God only knows how long. And it was a cold December night, and I was shivering behind the dumpster. And I looked up. In Arizona, if you've never been there, in the winter, it gets cold at night. So I'm looking up at the sky, and it's pitch black. I've got a T-shirt on and a pair of jeans. And I'm like, I don't know who you are or what you are, but help me get out of here. Help me get out of here. So the next morning I get up and I panhandle enough money to get a bus ticket back to Texas. I get to Texas, I turn myself into Galveston County. Galveston County said, we've been looking for you. I said, I bet you have. I bet you have. So I spent some time in the pokey, and before I know it, I go before the judge, Judge Susan Chris, who's now a state representative, I believe. And bless her heart, because she was no nonsense. I went before her and she said, well, Mr. Knepper, you owe the state of Texas approximately $38,000 in arrearage for child support, plus payments for your child's insurance. And she said, I want to know what you're going to do about that. And I looked at her very honestly and I said, I don't know. She said, well, here's what you're going to do. You're going to get out of jail, you're going to get a job, and you're going to start paying these things. There was that powerful word again, job. So they let me out of jail. I've got a T-shirt, a pair of jeans on, and I go to where everybody that gets out of jail goes, and that's the Salvation Army. So I'm at 23rd and Broadway. Now, remind you, I'm a smoker. I have no money. Well, about the third night I'm there, one of the fellow roommates at the Salvation Army said, I know a place we can go. They've got free cigarettes. All you got to do is just sit there and the coffee can goes around the room hundreds of times. I was like, this is my kind of place. Let's go. What have they got to drink? He said, coffee. I don't care. I want cigarettes. Let's go. So we go to this little corner place on 33rd and P in Galveston. There's no windows. There's a red door with a triangle on it. And I go in, and this nice little old man says to me, what are you doing here? I said, well, you want me to be honest or you want me to lie? He goes, well, I want you to be honest. I said, I'm here for the cigarettes. He said, okay. He said, sit back in that corner. He said, you can smoke all the cigarettes you want. You can drink all the coffee you want. He said, don't say a word. I was like, I can do that. So the more I sat there and smoked and drank free coffee, the more I kept hearing you people talk about me. That pitiful, incomprehensible demoralization. The feeling of uselessness. All the things that I had dealt with for so long. And I thought, these people they're in on something. How would they know all this about me? So at the end of the meeting, everybody stands up and holds hands. And I think, that's it. They're going to sacrifice me. Nobody knows I'm back in Texas. No windows in the building. They're forming a circle. They're going to put me in the middle. And they're going to cut my head off. Well, instead, 2 people invited me to join the circle to say the Lord's Prayer. And after the meeting was over, somebody said something to me that I hadn't heard in many, many years. And that was, please come back. Please come back. So I went back to the Salvation Army that night. And the next morning, I went straight back to 33rd and P. This time I wasn't looking for cigarettes and coffee. I was interested in what you guys had to say. And about the 12 o'clock meeting comes around, and a sweet little old man named Vernon Locke, he's passed away, so I can break his anonymity. He comes up to me and he says, Jeff, he said, you're a person we'd like to call maladjusted to life. You are a full flight from reality. There is no hope with human aid for you. However, I have an option. And I was like, I'm open to options. He said, there's a place called Recovery Campuses of Texas, just down the street and around the corner. He said, you can go there, you get 3 hots, you get a cot, you can shower. All you got to do is read the big book, follow some simple instructions. I was like, I can do that standing on my head. So they get me into treatment. And while I was in treatment, I learned some things about myself that I didn't like. Some honesty, some truth. So, fast forward, I go to work for the treatment center because I want to be an LCDC. Because that's what everybody does when they're in treatment, right? Oh, I'm going to be an LCDC and save the world. So while I'm working for the treatment center, I've got a druggie buggy full of guys from the treatment center at a meeting, and I'm telling them, this was at the Bay Area Club, the old Bay Area Club that was in the post office. I'm standing on the back porch after the meeting. I'm like, go get phone numbers. You need to connect with some guys. Get some phone numbers. Make yourself vulnerable. I'm going to stand out here, look cool, and smoke. So I'm standing on the back porch smoking, and I have what's called a grand mal seizure. Now, for those of you that don't know, a grand mal seizure is where you lose complete control of your body, and you have no idea what's going on. You're in full paralysis. I hit the, I guess it was like a receiving dock. And the next thing you know, I wake up in the hospital. The doctor said, well, here's the deal. You've got a condition called hydrocephalus, which is water on the brain. And he said, we can do a couple of things for you. We can operate, or you can go on about your way and we can try to prevent seizures. I said, well, let's do the operation. What's it entail? He said, well, we're just going to go into your brain and we're going to put a little pump, and it's going to pump out that extra fluid. I was like, well, I've lived through everything else. Why not? So I go through the operation. About 2 weeks later, I'm at the treatment center, and I start having really bad headaches. I mean, excruciating headaches. By the time I get to my neurologist, I'm in and out of consciousness. The shunt that they put in got infected. By the time they got me to the hospital to perform another surgery, I had slipped into a coma. I was in that coma for 9 months. They did 13 revisions. No, 7. They did 7 revisions on the shunt while I was in the coma. I came out of the coma in a hospital called TIR, the Institute for Recovery and Rehabilitation in downtown Houston, where I had to learn how to walk, talk, pee standing up. I had to learn how to eat because I had a scar here from a feeding tube. It was not a bed of roses, but I did it because I remembered that night that I took the 3rd step and I stopped running my life. So fast forward, I moved back to Galveston after my rehabilitation to be close to my people down in Galveston. Well, while I'm down there, here's that word again, I get a little job. with a friend of mine. He was paying me under the table because I'm on disability. So nothing wrong with that, right? Right, Lester? Okay. So, anyways, he's like, you know what you need, bro? You need a girl in your life. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I need. I need a girl in my life. He's like, have you had a plant? I said, no, I haven't had a plant. He goes, well, we're just going to skip the plant. He said, we're going to get you set up on this thing called Match.com. So he takes my picture, right? I'm like, he takes my picture, and he goes in and he makes this beautiful profile on Match.com. And two of the variables are, don't drink, don't do drugs, and have a relationship with God. So I'm staring at my computer now for days and days and days. Nobody responds to my profile. I'm thinking, what about that plant? So one day I come home and I turn my computer on and I've got a message. Well, it's a young lady who lives in Deer Park who's just got out of what's called Safe P. She doesn't work. She doesn't drink. She has a relationship with God. And she wants to meet me. So I'm like, great. The best place to meet is at an AA meeting. So she drives from Deer Park to Galveston to go to a meeting with me. Well, while we're at the meeting, she dehydrates, has a seizure, and everybody's like, oh my God, get her water, get her water. And she's like, I just haven't had anything to eat all day. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. So in the meantime, my sponsor, who got me the job, who was paying me under the table at that time, was over in the corner going, she's the one. Get it, bro. She's the one. So I'm going to fast forward now. We get married May 5th of 2005. All right. It's pretty cool. We get a little house in Deer Park. Her kids start to call me Dad. I thought, oh, this is sweet because it's replaced my family, you know, my starter wife and those two kids. So it's been replaced now with her. And she couldn't stay sober for the day as long. It didn't matter what I did. I'd beat her with the big book. I'd pray with her. I did everything. I'd haul her to meetings. I took her to treatment. Honestly, I did everything that a human being could possibly do. And she could not stay sober. And July 18, 2009, she killed herself. Because I interfered with God's handiwork. I stepped in and thought I could be her higher power. And because of that, she's dead today. I interfered with God's work. And I'll never forgive myself for that. I lost the kids. They went back to their biological father. And I was in this house that we built together, and it was empty. Thank God for effective sponsorship at that time and sponsees. Because the day she killed herself, I had a choice. I was either going to pick up my .38 and put a bullet in my head, or I was going to call my sponsor. I rolled the dice and I called my sponsor. He was in my house before the fire department got there. And he lived in Bay City. So he hauled some keister to get there. He said, pack some clothes, do what you need to do with the police. He said, we're not staying here. He took me back to his house after we filed the police report. And I sat in his driveway and cried incessantly for 3 or 4 days. And just chain smoked. Because I felt so guilty for what I felt I had done by interfering with her life. Fast forward, I go back to Deer Park. I decided it's okay to live there for a while. I hated it, but I lived there for a while. I got a job on the west side of Houston. So I started hanging out at a place called Primary Purpose, down in the Heights. And while I was there, I would drive from Houston to the Galleria to work, or from Deer Park to the Galleria, and I would make meetings in the Heights, and I ran across this chick while I was going to the meetings, and this chick had this aura about her. And at that point in life, I was nowhere near ready to even think about another woman. So we started to hang out. We'd go have coffee with groups. We'd go out to dinner with groups. And one day I was feeling really saucy. I know that surprises a lot of you. But I had her phone number. So I texted her. I said, "Good morning, my spiritual goddess." Because, you know, if you're going to play the game, be the player, right? Well, she responded. Mistake number one. All right. So I asked her, I said, "Hey, what are you doing Thursday night?" Because I get paid on Thursdays, right? "What are you doing on Thursday night? How about you and me, just the two of us, go out for dinner? See if there's any spark." And she reluctantly said, "Yes." Poor thing. So we go to dinner. Needless to say, we're a block and a half away from her favorite restaurant in the whole city of Houston. I thought I'd impress her and take her to a Thai restaurant. And I had an abscessed tooth at the time, and thought I was dying. But we had dinner together, and there was some spark. So we started dating. And then, what was it, about a month later?
2 months.
2 months. Okay, 2 months later, I did the alcoholic thing, right? I got all my shit together, pardon my French, got all my stuff together, and showed up at her doorstep. "I'm moving in. That's cool, right, babe?" She said, "Okay." So I move in, and I'm grateful that I did that, and I'm grateful she said okay, and she didn't pull something like my uncle did. So, needless to say, we move in together, and it was probably, how many weeks after I moved in when I asked you to marry me?
Flip-flop.
Reverse it?
Yeah.
Okay. So reverse that. I'm still living on my own. I haven't moved in yet, and I asked her to marry me. Now, we've been dating for 2 months, but I'm in love, and this is God because I prayed about it. That's how this thing works, right? You know, you ask God, and He delivers. So she said yes, but I had to meet her family first. So she brings me to Spring, and I meet her dad and her stepmom, and we go into their house, and he's got dead animals on the wall, guns in a cabinet, and I'm thinking, what have I got myself into? This guy's going to kill me. This is his baby girl. So I muster up the courage to ask him permission, and he said, "I've never seen my daughter so happy. I've never seen my daughter so happy." So fast forward, we get married. We bought a house. Life's good. I have a few more brain surgeries, just for shits and giggles. And my mother died. I wasn't able to be there for that, but I was there for the memorial. My grandmother died. So many of us die, and it was tough. It was tough. And I'm sure I didn't make her life very easy while I was there. But we did it. I went back to school. I finished my cosmetology license at Paul Mitchell, and I opened my own shop, which I thought, now I've got the world by the crosshairs. I've got my own salon. I'm going to be making money hand over fist. No, I didn't know anything about owning a business or having clientele or, developing a business plan or any of that stuff that calls work. I just thought if I opened it, they would come. So we struggled through with that for a couple of years. And then I had one more brain surgery, and I had to I shut the salon down when COVID hit because there was so much regulations going on with people getting their hair cut and me being so sick. There's just no way I could do it. So shut the salon down, and let's see, I become a stay-at-home dad to our dogs. We have 2 dogs that are amazing. One is a beagle, and one is a mutt, and the beagle does not know the word no, and the beagle will feign until you give it food or love, preferably food, and exactly. You can't walk by the pantry without her going, So, anyways, we have a good life today. I'm still on disability. I'm not working. Life is good. You know, sponsoring people is real important. Because when Penny committed suicide, my sponsor took me to a place called the Wheelhouse. And he dropped me off there because he had to go to work. And he said, do not let him leave. Surround this man and do not let him leave. And I had several sponsees there. So they did, they surrounded me. And when, this is going to sound morbid, but when I got the ashes from Penny, I wanted to honor her. That was the least I could do, right? So I go to the jewelry store and I get this amulet that I can put her ashes in and wear next to my heart. Because, you know, I love her dearly. And I wouldn't have been able to do any of that if my sponsees wouldn't have been there to help me. You know, my sponsor, I have a sponsee that was my best man in my wedding. I've lived the life of a rock star in sobriety, which is pretty cool. Can't do it today because of my illness, but I miss it. I like hot rods, even though I'm not a good mechanic. You know, life is good. And it's all because of people like you in rooms like this. And I want to say that I thank you guys so much for allowing me to be up here tonight. And that's all I got.